Okay, how's it going, everybody? JJ Starwind is here. Not to keep you guys too long, I want to do something of a follow-up based on my last video that I made in relation to Assassin's Creed Shadows. I'm going to tackle this at a different angle here because I know there's tons and tons and tons of videos about the game itself and about Yasuke himself. I'm not even going to address that part. I want to tackle this at a different angle because I had some pretty good engagement in the last video, even though some of it was negative and I was asking for that. But at the same time, I do thank you guys for coming and giving your thoughts either way. But I did have one person in particular who will be nameless say that I was completely lying and there's no way that Africans made it to Japan, especially during the time of the Sengoku period. But okay, have it your way. I'm just gonna have to show it better than I can just tell it. So let's show it, shall we? So this is how they got there in the 16th and 17th century. You guys can thank this, the Portuguese Empire. Alright, you can thank the Portuguese Empire for taking Africans out of the African continent and scattering them across various Asian locations. I even have a list of some of the places they went to, and it's a timeline of all the colonies that they established. Now, the Portuguese first arrived in Japan in the 1540s. They first made contact in Kyushu, notably, which is an island in western Japan. It's one of the major islands of that country. And of course, they had a couple of wars and skirmishes here and there. For example, the Battle of Fukuda Bay. And the pictures are brought to you by a famous Sengoku period Japanese artist. Let me get his name right. His name is Kano Naizen. Alright. He came from a family of painters. And thanks to him, we are able to kind of see how the Portuguese interacted with the locals, alright, along with the various peoples that they brought with them, including the Africans as well as the Asians from Southeast Asia. And hopefully you guys can see that from right there. So there's your proof that they did arrive in Japan during that time period. Now, Portuguese Nagasaki in Japan, that wasn't established until 1571. But they've had plenty of time to, the Portuguese, they had plenty of time to let their influence speak for itself. You know, bringing their sense of fashion, their language, their food. They even brought in, some of their property over, not just slaves, but also their wealth. And they was able to spread that throughout most of the country, although it wasn't as effective, and I'm going to get into that right now. Shortly after they came in Japan in 1543, the Portuguese started doing a massive slave trade. Not a big slave trade, but it was very noticeable of them taking in Japanese women for prostitution. So it was well noted. And not only did the Portuguese have these women for themselves, they even allowed their African and Southeast Asian counterparts to have the Japanese women as mistresses and concubines as well. So it was a fair deal here. And there's even another excerpt that I found from this gentleman here. His name is Frederick Cloyd. He owns this website called Dream Watcher Children. That's the name of the website, Dream Watcher Children. And he mentions here in this excerpt, he mentions that some of the slaves that did come to Japan, mainly the African and Southeast Asian slaves, not only were they used for just labor, they were there to be clerics, translators, and interpreters, or even tour guides. If they stayed there long enough, they actually knew the lay of the land. Okay, so as he noted, this isn't like, the West or the Americas where the slaves are pretty much stuck in one location and the only thing they knew was the area that surrounded them. They didn't venture out like that. Whereas the Portuguese pretty much allowed their slaves to kind of have a little more freedom. Okay, they even had property, literally. Okay, they had property, they had money. It wasn't like they didn't own absolutely nothing. So this idea that slavery was equal everywhere is false. Okay, especially according to this. And here's something interesting that I didn't even know, because I'm playing Rise of the Ronin right now, and he even mentioned he mentioned Commodore Perry having a black interpreter, black guides as interpreters. Okay, I didn't even know this, which is kind of crazy to find out. Which is funny because I'm playing the game right now. You don't see any African people on his ship, on his black ships. But apparently he had them on his ship. Alright, so let me read this last part here, what Cloyd mentions. What is also true is that the Japanese saw how the Portuguese, the Spanish, the British, and the Americans were treating black men or black people. This then put a first initial stamp into the people of the Japanese islands. So, traveling mostly by the stories and rumors across Japan as to how whites were treating blacks. So, they were not quarantined just in Japan, as it can be imagined that there might have been offspring from said relationships between African slave men and Japanese women. So there you go. Well documented. I'm not going to read every little paragraph on here, but I'll leave the links in the description box for you guys to check out. So yeah, it's true. They did arrive in Japan during the Sengoku period. You can thank the Portuguese Empire for establishing that worldwide slave trade that pretty much changed the world as we know it during that time, and you can still see the effects to this day. So there you go. If you guys have any more questions, then put in the comments or whatever. Continue to grill me or whatever. I do appreciate the subs. Either way, any engagement is engagement nonetheless. So yeah, I'll leave these links in the description box for your leisure, if you may. Didn't want to drag this on, so I'm gonna head on out of here. Have a good one.